program. We're joined now by Hamid Abdeljaber. He's a lecturer and professor at the Rutgers Center for Middle East Studies. He joins us from New York. From Cairo, we have Eyad Labib, a political commentator and analyst. And joining me here in the studio is Sahar Khamis. She's a Middle East expert and an associate professor at the University of Maryland. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Hamid, let me start with you. When we look at this case in Cairo, the judge in the case said this was not about politics. This was about a legal technicality that led to the acquittal of Hosni Mubarak. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think there is a point there when the trial was based on the killing of those who were in the 25 January revolution, while I think originally it should have been about the 30 years of stagnation and corruption. I mean, Mubarak should have been tried not only for what happened in those 18 days during the revolution, but for the 30 years that took Egypt back in time and destroyed its reputation and its weight and its leadership in both the Arab and Muslim world. Egypt became a very marginal power during those 30 years. Corruption went so high, and nepotism and preparing the son to be the hereditary leader of Egypt, that is unprecedented. That, I think, the premises of the trial was not on the right track. It should have been for those 30 years of stagnation and corruption.
Eyad, let me get your response to that Hosni Mubarak should not have been just tried for the death of the protesters, but he should also have been tried for what Hamid just told us was misrule in Egypt for the last 30 years.
To start, I cannot comment. It's illegal and unconstitutional to comment on a verdict in Egypt. On the other hand, what I'm going to say are my thoughts and my impressions. To start with, indeed, it is a technicality because that's how the judge presented the case, that Mubarak was not in the first round of accusations which were leveled at his Minister of Interior and his aides, who were acquitted also and cleared yesterday or during this verdict, this late verdict. On the other hand, making a sweeping statement of the nature that the gentleman presented is basically what is creating the furor here. A lot of people have mixed emotions. They have reservations on and are quite angry at the 30 years that Mubarak ruled, and they want him to be punished for that. You cannot punish him for a crime he didn't do on account of another crime. That by no means serves justice. Secondly, when we look at a presentation of the 30 years of Mubarak, and I'm well aware of the shortcomings, I have presented those in details on several occasions, you have to also present the positive points. Look at GDP per capita, look at any parameter from start till end, and you will find that in addition to the problems that we had that basically developed during his rule in education, in health, in many other lines, he actually did some very positive things that cannot be ignored. Okay, so I'm not responding to whether you can actually legally try him for that, because that brings up another question, which is quite simple. Can you try criminally somebody for judging in a way that you do not approve of? The question is, who is qualified to do that? What type of information do they have to gauge these decisions, whether they were right and wrong? It's very easy to sit in our armchairs and say, oh, it could have been like this, and it didn't, so on the other hand, he should have been tried. I believe that this is a much more complex matter, and it would be truly unprecedented if we try him criminally for not ruling the way we think he should have ruled. Despite the fact that I do have my reservation on quite a few of the cases, I actually share the concerns and to a certain degree the anger on some of these aspects.
Sahar Khamis, I suppose the basic question here is, has justice been served in Egypt?
Well, let's remember why Egyptians went out to the streets, not just in Tahrir Square, but in every corner of Egypt back in January 25th, 2011. They were not just asking for Mubarak to be ousted from office. Their main request was the change of the entire regime. They were calling for the entire regime that exemplified all the negativities of dictatorship, autocracy, corruption, human rights violations to go down. So now when you look back in 2014, and you get this kind of, a verdict that really clears him completely of any kind of wrongdoing, and not only him, but let's remember also all the figures and symbols of the old regime, the key figures in his own government and regime that people have really been angry at for many different reasons and for very good reasons. All of them being, cleared as innocent, being, acquitted, being seen as, maybe even victims of wrong verdict. That is beyond shocking for many, many Egyptians who see this as a major setback for the path of democracy and reform and transformation in Egypt. Simply, it assassinates the whole idea of why we had the revolution in the very first place. So people are now, really in shock, asking, what is happening in Egypt? Where is Egypt going? Where is it heading to? Why did we have the revolution in the first place? Why did people go out in the streets in the millions? Why did they lose their lives? Why did they lose their eyes and their limbs? And, some of them were badly injured. They wanted to see some kind of reform in the country that really kind of takes out the roots of an entire corrupt regime. And now what we are seeing is a major setback, going back again to square zero.
Hamid, what do you make of Iyad's point that you cannot put a leader on trial if you don't like his politics or his policies?
Well, there is what we call the revolutionary legitimacy. I mean, if there is a revolution, you don't go back and go by the book. There was a revolution that the majority of the Egyptian people went out to the street to end that autocratic rule. I mean, that is the legitimacy. Legitimacy came from the millions of Egyptians who took to the Tahrir Square and stayed there until they toppled the regime. That's a revolution. And the revolution has its own legitimacy. It has its own dynamics. So you don't go back and follow the rules of the constitution that has been written by that who was toppled himself. Then why there was a revolution? If everything was going fine and a mistake committed here and a mistake committed there? No. I think this verdict was the nail, the last nail of the coffin of the 25th January revolution. There was a plan to undo this revolution from day one. It was led by the military, supported by the petrodollars, and they were able to topple it. It took them about 4 years, but it was completely destroyed from A to Z. And all those who took to the street in the revolution of January 25, either they were killed or they are in jail, or they are in exile. I mean, not the important figures of the Egyptian revolution of January 25 had left the country or ran out of the country, and those who were in fact the target of this revolution are back into this stage. They were declared innocent of all the wrongdoing. Who killed those who were killed in the January 25? Who is responsible for them? Who is responsible for all the corruption that took place in Egypt for the last 30 years? I mean, with this verdict, I think that is the end of the January 25 revolution.
Iyad, has Egypt gone full circle? Yeah, has it returned to what it was like prior to the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak?
Well, first of all, it's extremely early to judge. We have just elected a president. He's not been in office for a year. Clearly, it is very early to judge how much has changed. Definitely a certain amount has changed. Whether it's going to be sustained, that change, and developed to live up to what we want or not, I think only time will tell. On the other hand, I think phrasing it that the old regime has come into power, these people have been acquitted from criminal charges. I am not aware of whether they will be politically involved or not, but it is extremely probable that they will not be politically involved. I don't think these people will see them again on the scene. The idea of toppling the quote-unquote 25th revolution, I am not a specialist. I'm talking with a professor and a lecturer. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a layman. Okay, so I cannot evaluate these grand theories. I'm not the one to do that. On the other hand, What I see is that it has been changed. When we are talking about those who fled the country and those who are in jail, we are talking about a terrorist group. And with all due respect, this is something beyond discussion. They have killed, maimed, sold the land of the country. This is something that is common allegation here. It may be debated, but that would take another 2 days of debates. And we can also, everybody can present how they actually think of that period. But it is these people who have fled the country with clear accusations. And instead of standing trial, they actually fled. So I believe this says a lot about what's going on.
So, Khamis, from what you've just heard now, these proceedings that we've seen in Egypt, these developments over the past few days, is it about the rule of law in Egypt, or is it about politics?
It is about everything. I mean, we are seeing really a recycling of the old regime with all its figures, with all its powers, with all its, all the things that the Egyptian people were revolting and protesting against are now, I'm afraid, being recycled once again and coming back again to the scene. And whether these people return back to political life, openly and overtly or not, that is not the question really, because, we know for sure that there are billions of dollars that have been, safely safeguarded for many of these key figures, of course, Mubarak and his family to start with, but other key figures and players in the Egyptian scene as well. The money has been safeguarded. They've been acquitted of their crimes. The revolution has been aborted to a large degree, although as an Egyptian, I would love to see hope, of course, and light at the end of the tunnel, that those people who had the interest in seeing their country being reformed will still continue to make their voices heard against all odds.